Welcome back to Spider Red. Have you wondered what happened to the class of 2023 of football recruits from the state of Georgia? As you can tell from my previous videos, I love high school football. It feeds college, college feeds the NFL. They're all stepping stones. But let's go back and look at last year's class and see how well they did in college this year. I'm going to concentrate on 7 kids that I thought made an impact on their team, all of them on the defensive side. It seems like Georgia produced defensive kids in this current class. After those 7 kids, we'll look at the remaining 50. I'm only going to go over the top 50, and I'll briefly go through all those kids, maybe pick one of their better games that they produced in. So let's take a look. So the first kid is the ranked 1 recruit from the state of Georgia last year. It's Caleb Downs from Mill Creek. He went to Alabama. He had a ranking of 9971 from 247 Sports. That's where I'm pulling all these rankings. Man, did he have a year. This kid in a couple years you're going to see in the NFL. He led Alabama's defense in tackles this year. He played all 13 games. He had 99 tackles. He had 2 interceptions and a forced fumble. He actually had 64 solo tackles, which was ranked 18th in the nation, which is highly impressive. And then he had 9 tackles in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff against Michigan. It was announced today that he's actually going into the transfer portal. Maybe that's because Saban's leaving. The defensive back coach was hired by Kirby Smart to go to Georgia. So maybe he's coming back home to Georgia. I would hope so. This kid is incredible. I mean, I just went over his stats. So be on the lookout. He's not guaranteed to go to Georgia. I mean, he's such a high recruit. I'm sure everybody's going to be at his door trying to get him in, especially after leading basically one of the better defenses in the nation this past season. So look out for Caleb. He had an incredible year. Up next, we have the 4th ranked recruit from Georgia, CJ Allen. He went to the University of Georgia. He was ranked 9671 on 247 Sports. He was a 4-star. There's only 2 5-stars in the entire state. One of them was Caleb Downs. I'll discuss the other one later. But C.J. Allen, he played at Lamar County Comprehensive High School. He's a linebacker. He's 6'1", 217. And he didn't start playing until the end of the season due to some injuries in that linebacking core for Georgia. But when he came in, he started playing really well. He came into that Ole Miss game, and he had 9 tackles in that game. He ended up playing 5 total games with 35 tackles with 1 sack. Kirby was getting in his ear on the sideline a few times in those first 2 games, but I think it was mainly because he could see the talent is there, and he was just trying to teach him, what to do. But be on the lookout for CJ. I think he's going to have a monster year next year and really help out that Georgia defense. Next on the list that I have that made a decent, good impact was the 12th ranked recruit from Georgia last year, Whit Weeks. He went to LSU. His ranking was a 9364. He was another 4-star. He is a 153rd recruit in the nation. He went to Coney County. He's a linebacker. He's 6'2", 205. He actually played 10 games at LSU. He had 41 tackles and just a half a sack. But he had a very good game against Arkansas and Ole Miss. He had 9 tackles in both of those games, which are 2 big games for LSU, especially Ole Miss. So he played really well. I mean, only 41 tackles, but still, that's contributing pretty well. I mean, if you look at all the defensive in college, I mean, that would still be in the upper 50% of tackles on a team. But Whit played very well. He's going to be another kid that's probably going to start all next season and play a big impact on LSU's defense. So look out for Mr. Weeks there for the Tigers. For the next recruit, we're moving all the way down to the 28th ranked recruit in the state of Georgia. That's Jalen Kilgore that went to the University of South Carolina. He's from Putnam County High School. He is a safety. He played safety at South Carolina. He had a 9.064 ranking, which is a 4-star. He was 289th in the nation, and he had quite the year at South Carolina. He played all 13 games. He had 76 tackles overall, which was second overall on the team. Check this out, though. He had 15 tackles and an interception versus Tennessee. 15 tackles. That kid was everywhere. Actually was watching parts of that game. I think the interception came, he was covering a tight end, but 15 tackles is pretty impressive. He also had 3 games where he had 10 or more tackles. Now look, South Carolina didn't have a good pass defense this year, but the defense was very young. Jalen being a freshman, a lot of their defensive backs were sophomores, so that secondary was a young core. So watch out for them. They had a lot of opportunity to grow this year, and I expect that secondary to be better. So when you're watching South Carolina, be on the lookout for number 24, that's Jalen Kilgore. Next up, we had another impressive safety. This was the 40th ranked recruit in the state of Georgia. It's Khalil Barnes. He went to North Oconee High School. He was actually listed as an athlete, but Dabo turned him into a safety. He went up to Clemson. His rank was 8941, which was still a 4-star. He was ranked 398th overall, but another kid that had a really good season. He played 13 games. He had 31 tackles throughout the season, which doesn't seem a lot, but it was still 5th most on Clemson's defense. He also had 1 sack, 3 interceptions, 6 pass defenses, and then 3 forced fumbles. One of the forced fumbles he turned into a fumble recovery touchdown, and that was against South Carolina. And in that game, he also had one of his interceptions and 4 tackles. But his best game actually came in the last game, which was the Gator Bowl. He had 7 tackles, which led the Clemson defense in the Gator Bowl. So be on the lookout for number 36, Barnes. And if you really look at this, 6 pass defenses, that's actually a lot for a safety, and 3 interceptions. So he definitely has a nose for the ball and how to read the quarterback's eyes when he's able to make that much of a difference. And he's a hitter too. He'll come up and try to thump some of the running backs or a wide receiver coming across. So be on the lookout for Khalil. Moving on to the next position, the 41st ranked recruit, Martell Hyatt. He went to Rome High School, the Rome Wolves. He went to Vanderbilt. He was ranked 8941, just like Khalil Barnes. He was a 4-star. He was ranked 400th nationally. He is a cornerback. He played 11 games for Vanderbilt. He had 38 tackles, which was 8th on the team, and he had a interception and 1 pass defense. The interception was a pick 6 against UNLV that was for 37 yards. He also had a good game against Missouri, where he had 7 tackles. Seemed like they were trying to throw on him that day. All of his other games, he had about 3, 4 to 2 tackles per game. Maybe that's good. Maybe they wouldn't throw into him as much. Honestly, I didn't get to watch a lot of Vanderbilt games. There's not a lot of highlights out there. But we do know one thing. Vanderbilt doesn't win a lot of football games, but he's going to get a heck of an education at Vanderbilt. So we're hoping that he will stay all 4 years, get that Vanderbilt degree, and then maybe try to move on to the NFL. He still has plenty of growth. He has good size for a cornerback. And, he made a good pick against UNLV, had a good game against Missouri. So maybe his growth over those 4 years will give him a shot at the NFL. So look out for number 25 on Vanderbilt. Next, moving just one more spot, is the 42nd ranked recruit in the state of Georgia. That's Bryce Thornton. So look, it's pretty interesting that 40, 41, and 42, all defensive guys, have made impacts. He was ranked 8933, 4-star. He went to Milton High School. He was ranked 405th overall in the nation. He is a safety. He played 13 games for Florida. He had 34 total tackles, a half sack, and one pass defense. He had 8 tackles versus Georgia, which was very impressive. He actually has NFL pedigree. His dad was a running back in the early 90s for the University of Georgia, and I believe he got picked by the Dallas Cowboys. I apologize. I should have went and looked that up. But let's focus on Bryce. This kid, God, in high school, he had no problems coming in to light someone up. I watched a lot of his high school highlights. I remember him because a lot of people thought he might go to Georgia because of his dad. And he played at Milton, and Milton's a powerhouse in the state of Georgia for high school football. I think he's another one. He's just like Khalil Barnes. He has no problems coming up to make tackles. He has a good eye for the ball. I think he has a good chance to grow with Florida and make an impact just like these other kids have. So Florida didn't get to go to a bowl game this year. You know, they had a rough schedule towards the end with Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, Florida State. A lot of good football teams at the end. They just weren't able to pull out a win. But be on the lookout for number 18 for Florida, Bryce. Now, the last recruit that I will focus on is the 48th ranked recruit from Georgia last year. His name was Bryce Pollock. He went to Mississippi State. His ranking was an 8886. He was 467th in the nation, and he was the first 3-star in the top 50. He was a cornerback. He played for Shiloh High School. He is 6'1", 175, so that's a bigger corner, even for these days. He only played 8 games. He had 24 tackles and 1 pass defense. But why I picked him is I like to show that even as a 3-star, you can contribute to a defense, and especially on this defense because they had a veteran secondary. Most of them were seniors. So hopefully that veteran secondary was able to show him, teach him a lot of things for him to grow next year. But there's so many 3-stars that can help a team, and that's kind of what I wanted to pick. And I just kind of wanted to show, look, 4 of my top kids were from ranked 40th to 48th. So it shows you that you don't always have to get a top 10 recruit in a state to be able to help your college football team. But back to Bryce real quick. He had 3 games with 5 or more tackles. But be on the lookout for number 34, the cornerback from Mississippi State next year. So let's look at the rest of the top 50. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over these. I'm going to stay on the defensive side since they had so much impact in college this year from the Georgia recruiting standpoint. So the 3rd recruit overall was Vic Burley. He's a defensive lineman from Warner Robins. He went to Clemson, but he was injured and missed the entire season this year. So hopefully next year we'll get to see Vic play a little more. Next was a 7th overall recruit, Stephon Green. He was a defensive lineman for Rome. He also went to Clemson, and he got redshirted. So Clemson should have 2 high recruits coming in next year. At ranked 11th, we have Kyan Lee. He was a cornerback who went to Cedar Grove. He was recruited by Auburn. He did play 8 games, had 18 tackles and 5 pass defenses. So hopefully he'll see a little more action in Auburn next year. Going down to the 14th recruit is Vakari Swain. He went to Central Carrollton. He was recruited by South Carolina. He only played in 2 games and had 2 tackles. The 15th top recruit for Georgia was Darian Reed. He was a defensive lineman from Carver Columbus. He got recruited by Auburn, but he did not play this year. I'm not sure if it was an injury or he just wasn't doing enough to get on the field. I'm not sure. Going on to the 16th recruit, we have Adonijah Green. He's a defensive end from Cedar Grove as well. He went to Louisville. He played in one game and had one tackle. Another one, hopefully he'll get more playing time next year. Next is the 17th recruit, Raul Aguirre. Sorry if I didn't say that right. He was a linebacker from Whitewater High School. He was recruited by Miami. He played 4 games with 6 tackles this year. The 18th recruit from Georgia, and everybody's going to like this one, Jamal Anderson. He is a linebacker. He was from Mill Creek, and he was recruited by Clemson. He played in 3 games with 6 tackles. Next is a 20th recruit, and that's Avion Terrell, cornerback for Westlake. Another Clemson recruit. He played 6 games with 16 tackles. He did have an interception, and that was against Georgia Tech, and he had 4 tackles in that Georgia Tech game as well. The 23rd recruit was Caden McDaniel, a defensive lineman from North Gwinnett. He was recruited by Ohio State. He played in 4 games, had 1 tackle. Actually, the tackle was a half sack, and he also played or had a pass defense, and the half sack actually came against Purdue. The 25th ranked recruit was Adam Hopkins. He was a wide receiver from Thomas County Central, the team that just won a state championship. He went to Prime Time's Colorado Buffaloes. He played in 3 games with 4 tackles. They actually moved him from wide receiver to defensive back. So maybe next year we'll see a little more of him on the defense. The 26th recruit, TJ Searcy, he's a defensive lineman from Upson Lee. He went to Florida. He actually played in 9 games with 26 tackles and a half sack. His best game was against Kentucky. This kid looks really good. I think he can have a big impact for Florida's defense. Moving on to the 27th recruit, that's Terrence Love. He was a safety from Langston Hughes. He also went to Auburn. A lot of Auburn kids on this list. He played in 10 games with 6 tackles. Now to the final defensive top 50 recruit. That's 29 Tyree Weathersby. He is a defensive lineman from New Manchester High School. He was recruited by Tennessee. He did not play. He was injured and missed the entire season. Another kid we hope to see next year. Now let's move to the offensive side of the recruits for the state of Georgia. It's not that they're not good, it's just they didn't get a lot of playing time. So I'm going to break these into 2 sections. The first section, I'm going to go over the offensive linemen. The 6th recruit, Bo Hughley from Langston Hughes. He was recruited by Georgia, and he did not play this year. Next, we have the 8th overall recruit, DJ Chester from Eagles Landing. He was recruited by LSU. He played 4 games. I'm just going to go over these because there's really not a lot of stats for offensive linemen. Next was the 19th recruit in the state, Kelton Smith Jr. from Carver, Columbus. He also went to Georgia, and he did not play any this year. The 22nd recruit from Georgia, Madden Sanker from South Paulden, went to Louisville. He did play in 1 game on their site. Shows that he came in. Maybe he came in on a game where they were up by quite a bit. On to the 24th ranked recruit, Zach Owens from Eagles Landing. He was recruited to Clemson, and he played in 2 games this year. Now we'll move over to the offensive side where they get to carry, catch, or throw the ball. We have the number 2 overall recruit, which was Justice Haynes. He's a running back from Buford. He went to Alabama. He played 5 games and had 137 rushing yards. He did have 2 touchdowns against Chattanooga, but that Mox game, I think Alabama won 60 to, I don't know, maybe 10 or something like that. I have no idea, but looks like he came in towards the second half and got 2 touchdowns. The 5th overall recruit was Jelani Thurman. He's a tight end from Langston Hughes. He went to Ohio State. He played in 4 games. He had 14 yards of receiving, and 2 of those catches were versus Michigan State. The number 9th recruit was Ethan Davis, another tight end that went to Collins Hill. He went to Tennessee. He played in 2 games. He had 33 yards, and all those were versus UConn. The number 10 recruit was Lawson Lucky from Norcross. He's a tight end that went to Georgia. He played in 4 games. He had 1 catch for 5 yards, and that was against Ole Miss. He did come in on a lot of blocking assignments in the running game when Bowers got hurt. He came in, and I expect him to play a lot next year. It looks like he has really good hands. I'm hoping between him and Delp that they can ease the pain of losing Bowers next year. Moving on to the 13th overall recruit, Dylan Lonergan, quarterback from Brookwood. He went to Alabama as well. He had played in 1 game, but he had 12 yards rushing. But hey, he was 2 for 2 against Chattanooga on 2 pass attempts. And honestly, with Milroe coming back, I don't know how much Dylan will get to play next year. But if you're getting recruited to Alabama, you've got to have some talent. Going on to the next recruit, the 21st overall recruit was DJ Braswell. He is a running back from Washington County. He went to South Carolina. He played in 6 games. He had 25 yards rushing and 35 yards receiving. And he's another kid that he definitely should get more playing time next year. And so the last recruit, this leaves us with the 49th overall recruit, and that is Caden Lee. He was a wide receiver from Kennesaw Mountain. He went on to Ole Miss. He played in 6 games. He only had 2 catches for 85 yards, but both of them were touchdowns. Both of them were long touchdowns. And just like the others, I'm hoping he gets more playing time next year. So that was your top recruits for the state of Georgia this year. I'm looking forward to doing this again next year or the 2024 class. Hopefully there'll be a little more balance of contribution between the offense and defense. I know there's some big quarterbacks coming out next year, so we'll see how well they do. As always, and I can't appreciate it enough, thank you for listening to Spot of Red. Hit that subscribe or like. Tell somebody you love them. I had one of my best friend's birthdays today. Happy birthday again, Lance. Be on the lookout for my NFL predictions for the rest of the playoffs. Again, thank you. Later.